Loneliness, being lost, fear of the unknown. These are things that many people are scared of, including me. Just the thought of being forgotten and alone in a forest may please some people, but for most, it would scare them. For me, being social is what scares me. I am unable to hold conversations with people or even be near them without that awkward aura, and I just don't really like being around lots of people, especially if I don't know them. Environments are also a thought that scares me as well, specifically forests. Just being in a never ending land of trees and plants and wildlife really puts life in a different perspective. The insects are really the worst part of it for me since I just don't like creepy crawlies or creepy crawlies that fly. So, when I made the decision to join a 3-day backpacking trip with some teachers and classmates, I really challenged myself to a whole new level. I knew that doing this trip would push me to places I've never been physically, but I didn't know how much it would affect me mentally. When I signed up, I was worried about how tired I was going to get and whether I was going to get into contact with wildlife. I had never done anything like this before. The only thing that could compare was the few times I went hiking, but even that couldn't compare to what I was going up against. About a week before the actual trip, all of us who were going on the trip had to go to some classes together. During those classes, we learned about how everything was going to work when we got out to the wilderness. The teachers talked about basically everything we needed to know to be safe in the woods and how we would engage with the land. After that, it was only a couple of days until it was time to set out. When we arrived at the start of the trail, I felt like I was ready. We started off on the trail and everything went okay. There were some first day struggles like being tired and not being used to all the nature, but other than that, it was exactly what I thought it would be. A peaceful walk in the woods with some friends. We hiked about a fourth of the total way until we got up to our first camp. Me being me, I got to camp later than everybody else. The first day was very draining, but we were told that the longer we were out, the easier the trip would get. The first thing I did when I arrived was go to the nearby lake and filter some water so I could drink it. I didn't realize how valuable water was going to be on the trip, so I wasn't very responsible with it earlier on. After I got hydrated, I stayed by the lake with some others for a while so we could all filter water for everybody else's meals. We had some mountain house meals that were really easy to prepare since all we needed to do was add hot water and wait a little bit and they were ready. Once everybody else had their water, myself and the other water filterers got water for ourselves and headed for the campfire to make our own meals to eat. I dug into my pack and I searched for my meals. I looked at the meals that I had grabbed earlier and looked for which one seemed the worst. However, there wasn't really a bad meal, I figured, so I ultimately just chose the beef stroganoff. I boiled some water and I poured it in the pouch of my meal. I waited a couple minutes and then it was ready to eat. After I finished my meal, I was ready for some rest after a long first day. I awakened to a nice, chilly morning. Many other people were up earlier than me already making breakfast. I put on my outfit for the long day ahead of me and I headed down a hill towards the lake nearby. I brought my toothbrush, toothpaste, and a towel so I could brush my teeth and wash my face. For breakfast, I wanted a hearty and fulfilling meal, so I chose a hash brown, egg, and bacon mash. While we were eating breakfast, one of my teachers, Mr. Jones, came up to me and asked, "Hey, want to join a couple of us to head out early?" I responded with a simple, "Sure, when are you heading out?" Mr. Jones told me, "In about 15 minutes or so. So, try to hurry and pack your things." With that being said, I promptly finished my breakfast and started packing my things. Unfortunately for me, I was packing up too slow and I saw the early group leaving already. I hurried my packing and headed towards the direction I thought I saw them leave. Following the trail for about 7 minutes, I had a sense that something seemed wrong. I had a stirring feeling in my gut that told me I was headed in the wrong direction. Usually, the other kids would be talking with each other, but I couldn't hear anybody near me. However, I figured that they were probably just tired since we had a long day yesterday. Whatever the case, I trotted onwards. I trotted onwards until I saw a very familiar dome-shaped rock. It was there that I thought to myself, would the trail go backwards? Then I thought about the silence and the unsettling feeling I was having, and I stopped myself. I stood still, dazed at the thought of being lost. I stayed immobile for about 5 minutes of mental wrestling until I decided I should head back towards the camp. I wasn't sure if the remaining people from the group were going to still be at camp, but I retained a moderate pace. Arriving at the camp was like how I arrived the first time yesterday, without the people. I looked around, comically dumbfounded that I may have just severed myself from the group on the second day. I ambled towards the center of camp, towards the campfire. I surveyed the area another time, trying to find a feasible direction that they could have gone. After some reasonable problem solving, I came to the conclusion that the path onwards was in a certain direction. Right at that moment, I saw an awkwardly perfect placement of trees that seemed like a door frame. When I headed closer to the strange assortment of trees, I discovered that it resembled a trail. With all the factors linked, I saw this path as the correct way to reunite with my lost companions. I looked back and said an actual final goodbye to the camp, and then I headed down the trail assuredly. As I followed the tracks of my group, I felt a cold trickle on my skin. I studied my surroundings and heard a soft pitter-patter on the dim leafy forest floor. The presence of rain started to pick up, but only for a little while. The rain then seemed to calm down. I thought the rain was going to continue only being a trickle, but the rain began to fall vigorously before me in a matter of minutes. My ignorance got the best of me. I didn't think the rain was going to get worse, so I didn't have my pack covered. During the meetings prior to the trip, we were told not to get our pack wet since it contained everything we had. If our pack were to get wet, it would, first of all, be irritating to carry a wet pack, but more importantly, could damage certain items inside. I immediately unbuckled and shook off my pack and dug quickly in search for my poncho. Once found, I tore the packaging open to reveal a clear, folded poncho. I shoved the packaging back in my pack and began to put it on vigorously. I hurriedly unfolded the poncho and threw it over me and the pack in one swift motion. Knowing that my things were protected from the rain reassured me. With all that settled, I traveled onwards on the muddy trail ahead of me as heavy rain continued to fall from the sky. I was steadily treading alone for about 30 minutes. The rain had reduced to a drizzle at this point. I made my way up a small incline on the trail. Once I reached the top, I saw a split in the trail. There was one trail going to my left and one going to my right. I would need to make a very important decision right then and there. I looked to my right, then I looked to my left. I took a very deep breath, looked both ways again, and then nonchalantly continued on the right trail. I decided to trust my gut, and that trust turned out to be the right decision. Looking through the trees ahead of me, I saw some subtle movement. I moved closer to the surrounding tree line and squinted my eyes to see who or what was there. Only a couple of seconds elapsed until I realized some people from my group had set up a quick little camp, presumably looking for me. I found them. I found my way back to the group. All I had to do now was walk a little further and then everything would be back to normal. I turned around and quietly walked the other way. I went back to the split in the road, laid my pack down on a log, and leaned on a tree. I then sat down on the same log my pack was on and just waited. I thought back to my whole expedition. The journey was so peaceful and enjoyable, all alone. Surprisingly, I was not scared for 1 second of it. There were some troubles, but nothing too big that overshadowed my tranquility. I really liked just being alone. I sat there waiting for about 10 minutes when I finally thought to myself, what are you doing? I thought about the situation I was in and how cruel I was handling it. I wanted to be alone, so I was going to leave the people who brought me here? Yeah, that's very smart. I wisened myself up and threw on my pack. I then put on an unruffled facade and walked towards the people. Mr. Jones was there and came up to me concerned and asked me what had happened. I got lost. Everyone has their own ideals and perfections, but we need to know when to come back to reality. I like being alone out there, but I can't be doing things like that when I'm on a school trip. I needed to think rationally and understand that my wants do not overshadow other people's feelings. Of course, being alone then was nice, but I definitely could not have survived for more than a couple of hours probably. I know that if I thought I heard some footsteps behind me, my heart would have shrunk and I would have just been frozen in extreme fear. But when you are with other people, you don't have to be scared since you have each other. Being alone was nice, but sitting by the campfire with everyone and hearing all the laughter and joyful conversations was even better. Everything in the world is about people. Everything that is worthwhile.